Hi everyone, welcome to today's lesson. We're going to be learning how to code the LED ring. So you've done a lot of work soldering and building that ring. Good job, yay. Now we're going to actually light it up and see if it works. So first things first, let's get started. Oh, if you don't have yours fully done yet, that's okay. You can do the coding without having it working. You just won't be able to test it. So when you do that test phase at the very end of this video, you'll have to finish building your LED ring before you can do the actual test. But you definitely can code without it. All right, first thing I'm going to do is change the name of the sketch. So up in the top left-hand corner, I have a brand new sketch open. I'm going to click here and do rename. And here I'm just going to call this LED ring. And hit rename. Awesome. Up here, this sketch controls a 12 LED ring. Or how about a ring of 12 LEDs? All right, so now in the void setup, we need to do a few things. We know we're going to be using pins 2 through 13, and they're all going to LEDs. So that means that they're going to be output pins because we're going to be turning something on or off, instead of an input pin, which would be reading a sensor like a temperature sensor or a button or a joystick or something else where we're reading its values. All right. To do that, we can just do 12 pin modes. Pin mode, blah, 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 over and over again. But I'm going to show you how to do a for loop to do that. So we know that we can use a for repeat loop to repeat code that we want to reuse. First thing we want to think about is, hey, I need to go from pin 2 to pin 13. So I'm going to actually create a for loop that starts at 2 instead of 0 and ends at 13. All right, so let's do it. So we're going to do for parentheses var, and here for my counting variable, I'm just going to use the letter I. It's oftentimes used for the count variable. And I'm going to set it equal to 2 to start with, because we're going to start with pin 2. And then this is the condition, the second part of this, so semicolon here, sorry. The second part of this is, actually I should speak to that for just a second. This semicolon right here, oftentimes inside of parentheses like this, these are usually commas in between different elements. For a for loop, it's a semicolon. I'm not sure why, but it's one of the outliers. Usually these are commas inside here. Var I equals 2, and then this is the condition where it's going to continue to run. So I less than, or less than, let's say we want to go to 13. Now if I do it as I less than 13, it's actually going to start at 2 and then end at 12 because that's when it's less than 13 still. So to make it, I can do two things. I can say, okay, just change the 13 to 14. That way it goes one more time through. Or I could leave it at 13 if I wanted to and put in equals here. And that means it's going to go until I is less than or equal to 13, which means we'll do that one last time is equal to 13. Both ways are totally fine. You can do it however you like. Another semicolon. So this is going to keep looping until I is less than or equal to, while it's going to keep looping while I is less than or equal to 13. As soon as it's 14, it'll stop repeating. And then the last thing is we're going to tell it how much to increment by I plus plus. Oops, that's 1. I plus plus. And that I plus plus just says, hey, every time you loop through the for loop, increase I by 1. The plus plus is short script for 1. Okay, outside the parenthesis, we're going to put in an open curly brace and hit enter. And you can see it already entered, already put in the closing curly brace for this for loop right here. So we don't have to add that. It's already there for us. So now anything in here is going to be what happens every time it goes through the loop. So if it goes through the loop, it does what's inside here. So here we're going to put pin mode. And we're going to do like, we're going to start with pin 2. And we're going to set it as an output. Output. Awesome. And then semicolon at the end to close that, to end that line. Notice I did not put a semicolon here. I did not want to end this for loop. I wanted to open the for loop. So I used the open curly brace instead of a semicolon. That's the typical outcome. All right, pin mode 2 output. Now if we do this, it's going to repeat pin mode 2 and output, setting it as an output 12 times as it loops through. So I actually want this 2 to change to 3 for the next loop, then to 4, then to 5. And the cool thing is, because we set up our I variable to start at 2 and end at 13, we could put I here instead of 2. So what that means, in the first for loop, I is set to 2, so it'll put a 2 here. Then when it loops back around to the next one, it sets I to 3, it increases by 1, which means when it does this line of code, I is now 3, so it's going to set pin mode 3 output. And then boop, up 1, 4, pin mode 4 output. And right there, that for loop sets all 12 of our pin modes. So yay, we just got rid of 12 lines of code and replaced it with 3 lines of code. So that's a good thing. All right, so the next thing we need is, maybe we're going to do just because we know we're almost always use it. I don't see why this is in here. Well, actually, maybe we're not going to mess up with it. So I'm still in the void setup. So here's my open, there's my close of the void setup. I'm still inside here, and I'm going to type in serial begin. I don't know that I'll need it. I could not put it in, I guess, but I almost always want to see what's wrong with my code. I almost always make mistakes. So I need, serial.begin. So the serial should be green or orange now, and the begin should be green. And 9600 is the default speed. Let me add some comments in here, right? So this sets all the LED pins to outputs. And then this opens a serial connection with, or maybe between, Arduino and a laptop. Beautiful. And I'm going to hide this console mode down here. We don't need it yet, so I'm going to hide it. I can always bring it back when I need to by just hitting this little up arrow here. I think that's it for our void setup. If we need to, we can come back and do something with it later. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to turn all the lights on. Actually, let me hit the clean up on the auto indent and see what it does. Yeah, I don't think the auto indent's working well yet. It should have shifted this for loop over back 1 space. It's like 1 too many spaces over. But that's okay. So I'm going to go down in my void loop. I'm going to hit enter a few times just to give myself some space. I like to have some extra space when I'm working with it so I don't accidentally go outside of it. I'm going to tab over 1 so I'm not right against the wall here because I want to make sure I'm in the void loop. And then I'm going to type in 4 here. And what I want to do is turn all of the lights on. So I could do 13. Well, first of all, let's talk about that. We're turning an LED on and off. Those are the only 2 things we're setting on it. So we need to use, we can use a digital instead of analog. Remember, digital means either on or off, no in-between values. Analog means there are in-between values. And for Arduino, those in-between values are from 0 to 1023. So analog does that big range. Digital just goes on and off. So here we can do digital. Let me do it real quick. And we're going to do digital because we're just doing on or off. And then we're doing right because we're sending it somewhere. And what we need to tell it here is we need to tell it 2 things. Which pin we're turning off or on, and then whether we're turning off or on, we're telling it high or low. So it'd be like 2, high. That would turn pin 2 high. And again, I could do this, copy and paste this, and change it 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to turn all the lights on. But why do that when we can just do a for loop? So let's get practicing our for loops again. So again, in this case, we want to do the for loop. What was I just going to say? We want to do a start at 2 and end at 13. So I'm going to just go up here and go for, let's see, var I equal to 2. So that's my starting point. So I created my count variable I. I can keep reusing the I over and over again. The only time I can't do that is if I have a for loop inside this for loop. I can't use the I. I have to change to some new variable. But again, this is whatever letter or word you want to use. You could use the word count here if you wanted to. Or you could use pin number if you wanted to as well, because what we're really using it for, right? And I'm going to say I is less than or equal to 13 is my criteria for continuing to loop. And then I plus plus. Outside here, I'm going to put in a curly brace, enter, give myself a little bit of space. And then this is where I'm going to actually, I'm going to actually do the digital write inside here. If you spell digital right correctly, it'll turn green on you now. And remember, it's a capital W on right. And then here I'm going to say, remember I said we said 2 comma high. We'll put turn pin 2 on. Put a semicolon here. And if we did this, it would turn pin 2 on, and it would do it 12 times. But I wanted to turn on pin 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all of them. So instead of putting a 2 here, I'm going to actually put an I. So the first time through was 2, the second time through was a 3, then a 4, then a 5, and a 6. Good. Everything looks good. At this point, I think we're ready to test. So we've pin moded out, we put all of the output, and then we've turned them all on. This is our first big test, so plug in your Arduino and download this code and see if your light turns on. If one or two of them don't, oh, let's add some stuff. Wait, sorry. So this turns pins 2 through 13 on. And this is repeats from 2 to 13. That's not a very good, if you can think of a better comment there, that'd be better. Mine is kind of weak. I'm tired right now. And yeah, give that a shot. See if it works. If it turns on, you're ready for the next assignment in Google Classroom. Well done, my friends.